there's so many questions that need to be answered.
We're learning more about the case of 22-year-old Beauty Couch, a Georgia-based Instagram influencer who was found murdered last week. Days after Couch's body was recovered, her boyfriend was arrested 3 states over. But nearly 1 week after she first went missing, a motive is still unclear in her death.
At the end of the day, there are times when people kill someone for the smallest of reasons. Unfortunately, we just don't know what caused it in this case.
Law&Crime legal analyst Julie Rendelman says investigators are likely working toward a motive in the crime, but it's not necessary for a conviction.
Keep in mind that the prosecutor is not required to have a motive in order to prove an individual guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. However, anytime there is a motive and you can introduce that motive to the jury as an explanation as to why an individual would want someone dead, it's going to make their case much stronger. I think they're going to be interviewing family members, witnesses, friends of the couple, to see if any of them can express or explain what possible motive there would have been.
Just after noon on August 23rd, a 911 call came in for a brush fire in Austell, Georgia, about 30 minutes outside of Atlanta. When officers arrived to the scene, they found a vehicle completely covered in flames. They later traced the vehicle back to Kimberly Couch, whose daughter, 22-year-old Beauty Couch, had not been seen since the previous day.
I don't think they realized at that moment who the car belonged to. I think it wasn't until they realized that the car belonged to a family member of Beauty Couch and that she was reported missing that they realized this is much more than what they initially thought.
Prior to her death, Couch was known to her some 155,000 Instagram followers as an Atlanta area dancer who offered roller skating lessons for those hoping to perfect the sport. After investigators learned she was missing, they returned to the scene of that burning vehicle. There, in a nearby tree line, Couch's body was discovered.
I am curious to know how far away the body was from the vehicle. Was it that they were just focused on the vehicle and didn't notice her? Was it that she was covered in some way that prevented them from noticing her or where she was?
Days later, Couch's boyfriend, 21-year-old Eugene Louis-Jocques, was arrested about 450 miles away from the crime scene in St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana. According to a press release from the parish's sheriff's office, Louis-Jocques was taken into custody at about 4:30 p.m. on August 25th and booked into jail as a fugitive. A statement from the sheriff's office reads in part, quote, "Let the message be that we do not take kindly to people who think they can commit a crime elsewhere and try to hide in St. Tammany Parish."
It's always interesting when an individual is caught, particularly for a homicide, and they are traveling in another jurisdiction shortly after the crime. Now, the argument could be from his defense perspective is he wasn't there and he was visiting Louisiana because that's where he was planning to be. But if there's evidence that shows that he left Georgia immediately after she went missing or her body was recovered and then ended up in Louisiana, that's going to be something the prosecution is going to hone in on and say, why was he fleeing the state?
While Rendelman says more people could be arrested in connection to Couch's murder, it makes sense that the investigation pointed to her significant other.
Anytime an individual is found dead under suspicious circumstances, law enforcement is naturally going to hone in on potentially family members and close friends. So it's not surprising when we hear a boyfriend or a husband is arrested for a murder. In this case, we can only guess that it's not just the linkage of their relationship, that there's going to be much more evidence that links him to her death, including possibly, and again, we're just guessing, cell site information that links him to the location, perhaps text messages between the two of them, perhaps witnesses that saw them together just before she went missing. I think time will tell as to what we're really going to find out as to what the evidence is.
Louis-Jocques now faces charges of murder, arson, and aggravated assault.
Sometimes the prosecutor's office charges multiple counts and what we call them lesser included counts. And so, for example, if there's evidence that he assaulted her, but didn't necessarily intend for her to die, that can be an added charge. It's sometimes just in a sense, the prosecutor isn't sure exactly what happened, and so they add additional charges just to cover their bases.
From here, Rendelman says law enforcement will likely interview family members, friends, or potential witnesses about the case. But she says officials are still in the early stages of an investigation that could go in many different directions.
So one would expect that we're going to have several court appearances. And at that time, the prosecution is going to begin to provide the defense attorney with what's called discovery, which is the evidence they have against the defendant. And that's going to give the defense an opportunity to review it. And by the way, the defense is going to have a chance to decide, do they think that the evidence is strong? Are they going to argue that there wasn't probable cause to arrest this individual? Is the evidence so overwhelming that the defense is going to say, should we look into some type of mental health issues for the defendant? Is there some type of self-defense for the defendant? There's so many ways that this case can go. I think it's just too early to tell.
Investigators ask that anyone with more information come forward to the Cobb County Police Department in Georgia.
Anytime an individual is arrested and we don't have additional information, we don't know exactly what evidence they have. We assume they have probable cause to arrest an individual. But remember, prosecutors and law enforcement are always looking for additional evidence to strengthen their case. Maybe there's a witness who saw them together right before the car began to burn. Maybe there's someone who saw him fleeing the scene. Anything, any type of evidence that can help secure a conviction to really bring justice to Beauty Couch is what they're going to be looking for.
Right now, Louis-Jocques is being held in Louisiana, awaiting extradition back to Georgia. Reporting for Law&Crime Network, I'm Sierra Gillespie.